This training is for the Apple's Junior 3G. This machine is the third generation of the Junior machines. So some people might be familiar with the Junior Plus, which was the second generation, or the Junior machine, which was the first generation. A lot of the features may be similar, so if you have those other machines, you can definitely follow along. The Junior 3G is a very simple machine, as you'll see as we go through this training. So part of what we are going to be going through, we will start with all of the different cords and where those plug into the machine. Then we will go over the configuration menu, how to configure the machine. We will go through the different modalities on the machine, the presets that are available, and other technical applications, and then finish up with some of the other functions on the machine. Let's start by showing you all of the different attachments here. One thing to note is that some things may not be available in the US market. For example, on this slide here, you see that the Vitaphase connector is not an available feature in the US, and that is indeed true. And so if you are tuning in here from some other country outside of the US, you may actually see a different connector here. I will explain what this is, but if you do not have it, it is just that it is not for your country. So we have a few connectors in the front, and I will go through these one by one, and we will also talk about the ones on the back. So on the back of the machine, let me actually show you first the different connectors that we have available on the machine. So what I have here is the machine that I've set up and the different connectors that you may see as you order the machine. So I'll go from left to right and explain what we have. This is here the foot pedal. So the foot pedal is the new dome foot pedal from Dectro. Then we have a red connector. Here, so a red connector. There is a black connector cord. You have the attachments that go with these connectors here. So this is the wand that goes with the black connector, and these are attachments that go with the red connector. You may have both, you may have either one, both work for the same purpose. And then we do have one probe holder that comes with the Junior machine, which is a size regular probe holder. And these probe holders are interchangeable between 13.56 megahertz machines, but they do not apply to Platinum machine or Excel machines. When we talk about a regular size probe holder, what I am talking about is the length of the handheld portion of the probe holder. So this is this portion here. So this length is considered regular. We have other sizes that you can choose to purchase. One of them is a short, and they go as small as extra short. I will show you a size comparison in a little bit. So let's start by turning this machine around and showing you where to connect the power cord and the foot pedal. So on the back of the machine, we see a couple different things. One is going to be where we connect the foot pedal, which is going to be this output here. So the foot pedal has a little groove in the plug itself. So you want to make sure that the groove faces up as you push it into the connector here, and then tighten using the little screw-on bolt here. For the power cord, this power cord you can actually buy at most electronics store. They're just computer cords. You have the this part here that pushes in there. Make sure that you match it on the right side. Push it all the way in. Make sure that it is secure. One of the most common reasons why somebody's machine might turn on or off on its own is because somebody did not push this in all the way here. Power switch is here on the back. So it's just a simple on-off switch. And this here is a fuse. And so if there's surcharges of electricity in different parts of the world or in different states, the fuse will actually blow before the machine, which can save you a couple $1,000s. That covers what is on the back here. So we're talking about the pedal connector is number 4 here. The fuse is number 3. The power connector is number 1, and the on and off switch is number 2. So let's go back to the front and talk about what connects in the front there. So like I told you, the Junior 3G comes with the one regular size probe holder, and that connector is right in the front, right in the middle. I will show you what a different size probe holder might look like for future reference, so should you ever be interested in something other than the regular. So a regular probe holder was this length here, something like a short probe holder, which if you get a junior or a platinum or an XL, you actually have one of each. So a short probe holder will be a length a little bit shorter than the regular. An extra short is actually half of the short here, so you have extremely short probe holders if that is something you might be interested in. Other than that, the probe holder here gets plugged into the front. There's a small little button in the top here. Make sure this is facing up. It goes inside, wait for it to click, and then it's good. The probe holders have a little spot on the side of the machine. There's one on either side where you can actually wedge your probe holder in and it holds the probe holder in place. So we can kind of take a look at that here. You can see that it is just a little rubber area where the probe holder can be wedged into. So it's a little holding spot there. The red connector gets plugged into the red connector on the machine. So the machine will tell you where the red goes and where the black goes. So I would have, let me zoom in a little bit to this area so that you can see where the red and the black connectors. So the red connector is on the machine here, the little red connection that you see there. The black is what you find on the other side. So red cord gets plugged into the red and the black cord gets plugged into the black. Let's go over the different features of this red connector. So when do we actually use it? So we use the red connector when we work auto mode. Working auto mode is working without the foot pedal. When we work blend modes and use the tolerance test is specifically for galvanic current. When we do pure galvanic current, so just straight electrolysis, and if available, when you do your moisture test. Anytime that you need to use the red connector, there's actually a light right above the red connector that will light up, letting you know that you actually need to give the client the ground. So the red light over the red connector will light up when the electrode is needed. You do need to place some sort of wet sponge, a wet paper towel, or any type of wet cloth over the electrode ground itself to facilitate the connection. So the red cord here could come with a few different accessories. The rubber plate is one thing. You can use that to place it, let's say, underneath a client's shoulder as opposed to having them hold the electrode. The rod is the stainless steel rod that can also be connected to the red cord. These may have come with your machine and they are just sponges. So like I said, you can also use something like a paper towel, but wetting something like that, you can slip the electrode right inside of it. It's like a little pocket and they fit over the electrode that it comes with. Let's go back to our video so that we can take a look here. I will show you where these things plug in. So when we open the bag, we have just a simple wire, your banana plugs. One of them will just be pushed right into our red connector here, and the other side is where you'll place the electrode. So you can either use the rubber one, and you have to just push this in here. So go ahead and give it some force, and this is connected now. Or you can use the stainless steel and just plug this right in here. There is also a little area on the side of the machine where this can actually fit into its own little stand. So let's see if we can delicately turn this here and move this here so that I can show you where this kind of gets plugged in here on the side of the machine. Up next is the black connector. The black connector is to be used with the wand, and the wand is where you would place these different types of electrodes. The junior actually comes with the roller specifically. So you may see, and this is the old version of the wand. So the wands have changed. I'll show you what it looks like. For the most part, you should have one black cord, one wand, and one roller. And this is used with anaphoresis or cataphoresis. Same as with the red cord. When the wand is actually necessary, so specifically when you are in anaphoresis, cataphoresis mode, the light will light up on top of that connector. We will go over the cataphoresis a little bit later in time. as far as not available in the USA, you can ignore that. That is no longer true. So we can actually use the wand in the US, but you may not see the VitaPhase connector here. So this is for a specialty type of handpiece, which the US market does not offer. The black connector is the same type of cord as the red connector, where you will just plug one of your ends here into the black connector side of the machine. And then the wand may look something kind of like this here. So this is the new wand as opposed to having the one that screws at the top here. And so the other end of the connector, I'm not going to open the bag here, but the other end of the connector will just go right into this one here. So this is essentially the attachment for anaphoresis, cataphoresis. So we will start by going over the configuration menus on the machine. Okay, so first things first, we want to turn on the machine. So remember to reach in the back here and just flip the switch. This turns on the machine, and then we can start with looking at the different configuration options. The configuration button on the machine is the two gears here that is on the corner. So when we press here, press it until you actually see the different options, will display what the configuration menu is. So let's start with some of the options that are available and which ones we cannot see right now. So the configuration menu will display the galvanic lead. When we do blend, you can lead with high frequency or galvanic. This will only be visible if you were previously in a galvanic or blend mode. So I will show you where that's at, and that's the reason why my screen wasn't showing it just a second ago. The skin test is the moisture test that I said was only going to be available on certain units. And so my unit is a US unit, therefore we do not have it. I'll explain a little bit what that does, so if you have it, you can understand. The auto delay deals with auto mode. So when we work auto mode, we work without the foot pedal. When we work without the foot pedal, we need to set a delay into how long do we give ourselves to do an insertion before the machine delivers the current. This is where I would come in and put that type of delay. Tolerance tests, you would see this when you are in the blender galvanic modes. This is to test the client's tolerance to galvanic current or milliamps so that you can then use that to go back and manually adjust a blend setting. Then the machine comes with either insulated or non-insulated presets. This is important if you are essentially comparing across machines. The insulated modes will be a little bit less intense than the non-insulated modes. So when we go through all of these, you have the galvanic lead, you have the moisture tests, which can test superficial moisture as well as deep dermis moisture. You have the auto delay that is for auto mode. You have a tolerance test, which is specifically for milliamps. And then you have the presets either in insulated or non-insulated settings. So when we start with the insulated versus non-insulated settings, what you need to ask yourself is what type of probes are you using on your machine? So there's a lot of different types of probes on the market. When we talk about shanks or mandrins, we are talking about the part of the probe that fits inside the probe holder. So I showed you a probe holder earlier. Think about the part that you load into the prongs that you secure with a white cap. That is the shank. And shanks come in a couple different styles on the market. You have F shank, which is usually US and Canada standards, K shanks, which tend to be some European countries and medical standards, and J shank. Then we can go a little bit further and talk about two-piece versus one-piece probe. Essentially, a two-piece probe is when you have two separate pieces to a probe. The shank is one piece, and then you have a surgical wire that is pinched into the shank, and that makes it two pieces, surgical wire and shank. A one-piece probe is when you have a shank that is shaved down into a point, so you have one continuous piece of metal. Therefore, it's called a one-piece probe. When we go a little bit deeper, you can talk about insulated versus non-insulated. So what this diagram actually shows you is different types of insulated probes. The teal color here is signifying insulation. So this probe, for example, is a stainless steel, meaning there is no insulation at all. If you work with either one-piece or two-piece probes, but non-insulated, you would want to make sure that you keep the machine on the non-insulated settings. If you use the gold probes, that is another one where it is essentially a non-insulated probe. There's no insulation on the gold probe, it is simply gold-plated. The insulated probes could be one-piece or two-piece. Doesn't really matter which brand, but if you use insulated probes, then you can go into your configuration menu and actually set your machine to use the insulated presets. Let me show you how to do that, and we'll talk about why that's even important. The insulated versus non-insulated presets can be set right here. So right underneath where it says probe insulated, you can press underneath here and it will change it to non-insulated. When it is on non-insulated, it is using the non-insulated presets. If you use insulated probes, go ahead and put into the insulated presets. Essentially what this means is that if I have, for example, a setting, a preset, let's say I'm using leg and I'm using level 4. If I'm using leg in level 4 with insulated settings, the time and the intensity will be less than if I used leg 4 with non-insulated settings. The reason why this is even an option on the machines is because we take into account that with non-insulated probes, you have a lot of loss of energy higher up in the probe where you would see Teflon coating or some sort of insulation on insulated probes. This means that with the loss of power, you naturally need higher parameters. Because you need higher parameters, everything is just going to be a little bit higher with the non-insulated presets. It takes into account loss of energy higher up in the probe where you don't see something like that happening with insulated probes. Insulated probes, you have the insulation here, forcing the current to come out of the non-insulated portion of the probe. So that allows you to lower your parameters. Because the parameters are lower, the setting is going to be more comfortable for the client. Because you're protecting the top of the skin, you will see less skin reactions happening. There is a second configuration menu that we can see by pressing on the configuration key one more time. So let's go ahead and do that. I will display it here and then we can talk about the different features that we'll see. So when I press here one more time, you can see that I flipped to another preset or another configuration menu. So we can easily just go back by pressing the same button over and over again, and you will see yourself kind of flipping through. This was a setting that I had it on earlier, playing around with the machine. This is my first configuration menu, and here is my second. So what we see here from left to right, one is going to be sounds. Then you have the language, and you have the version. Then you have some statistics, and then date and time. When I first turned on my machine, I could see the date and the time displayed. So I can actually change that here. If we go through daylight savings or anything like that, you can come into your configuration menu and change that. So with the sound signals, there's the option for the sound level. The sounds go from 0 to 9, where 0 is no sound at all and 9 is the highest that it will go. You can put in any number between 0 to 9. You'll see a second thing down below, and it has the tonalities. This helps when you are in certain modalities, such as blends, where you have a lot of beeping, some for maybe the pulses of high frequency, and some for galvanic itself, and you maybe want to hear all of the beeps that go along with the pulse, and then the beep at the very end that tells you the pulse is over. If you don't want to hear that, then you can change tonalities here. So it talks about different levels of sounds. So more of a high-pitched type of beeping or a low-pitched type of beeping that can tell you different parts of the pulse itself. If we go under the sounds here, what you'll see is, first of all, the sound level. This is the blinking number here, so it's at 9, meaning that it is at the highest that it can be. We will use our plus and minus in order to move up and down from there. So as I press the minus key, it goes down. I can also hear less and less of it. So let's do that so that you can hear what the sounds might be like. when we want to go back to the screen where we were, there's two different options with this machine. You can always use the foot pedal. The foot pedal is sort of like an enter key most of the time, and will take you back to your treatment screen. You just keep pressing it until you do. Or you could have pressed on the configuration key, and it could take you back to this screen here. The language selection is the one that was just right next to that, and so you can actually press right underneath the language selection and go and flip between the different languages. So if your machine is set in English, then you would see English. It could be in French, in Spanish, Italian, German. Just flip through all of them, find the one you're comfortable with, and then it will translate everything on the screens. The flip side, if you get a machine that is in a different language and you're not sure what to do, just remember to go into your configuration and find this key here, flip through it until you have it in the correct language. Then we have some statistics. The statistics are your hair and your time counter. So there is a hair counter on this machine. One thing to keep in mind is that the only way that the machine can count hairs is by counting pedal pushes. So when you start on a client, let's say you are one of those who likes to calculate hairs as you do the treatment, you can always come into this screen here and reset your cumulative, do your treatment, and then come in and view your cumulative afterwards. So I could come in and view the cumulative. So see, this has never been reset. So the pedal has been pushed 2,235 times, and it has been running turned on for 9 hours and 6 minutes. I could go back, reset these statistics, so confirm that I will reset it to 0. It's either yes or no. I will press yes, and now when I go into my cumulative, you'll see that everything is put back to 0. You could do this after each and every single client and get these types of statistics on your treatments. So that's there, and then let's go ahead and look at the date and time since we're here. The clock is in military time, so that is a 24-hour clock. So keep in mind that 1853, we are looking at 6 o'clock. What is that? 6:53, so almost 7 o'clock. Not the actual time, so actually the time is off. So we can, let's bring it down to 15. No. Okay, I'll have to show them that I know what the hell I'm doing. Okay, so you'll want to use these arrows here to navigate from the left and the right. And then let's bring this down to 1554, which is going to be, and the date is correct. So this is June 23rd, 2020. So we're happy with that. I'm going to press on my button here. And so what we see is the home screen. So now I have the correct time for where I am, the name of the machine, and today's date. Let's continue. So let's go talk about the auto mode. If you remember, the auto mode was the working without the foot pedal. So there is an auto mode key on the machine. If you don't like to press the foot pedal when you are working, then you can opt to use the pedal-less function. So auto mode, there's a button, I'll show you where it is, that turns it on. And then if you remember from the configuration menu, we could set our delay. The way that auto mode works is that your probe essentially becomes a moisture sensor. And as soon as the probe touches the top of the client's skin, it starts a countdown. This countdown is how long you need to do an insertion before the machine automatically delivers the pulses. So you've already set your setting, your pulses, everything that you want for the hair removal. What you need to think about in this screen here is going to be how long do you need to do an insertion. Factory preset comes at 1.5 seconds. So if you are working on an area where the insertion is easy, you can always come in and speed it up. Or if you're working somewhere where it takes a little bit longer to do an insertion, you can come and slow it down. So let's go through everything and set auto mode on the machine. So here's our machine here, and let's say that I am working in thermolysis and I want to work auto mode. So there's a button here that has an icon of a foot pedal with a circle and a line through it. So this is the auto mode key. We press here, now you'll see that auto turned up on the screen there, telling me that I am now in auto mode. One thing that you did not notice, and I will do this again, is that there's a light that lit up down here. So let me turn off the auto mode so that you can see this again. So normally, because I'm in a treatment mode, the light that is lit up is the one that is on top of my probe holder, where my probe holder is connected down here. When I'm doing thermolysis, there is normally no ground that is required. But if I work auto mode, this light here lights up on top of where my red connector is. The red connector gets plugged in there. That is the ground, the thing that the client has to hold. That is the only way that auto mode will work. So even though you are working in thermolysis, which normally does not require a ground, if you are working auto mode, you will have to give the client the ground. The ground that I'm referring to is the red cord with either the rubber attachment or this bar electrode here with the wet sponge or paper towel wrapped around it. You give this to the client. This is how the machine will be able to sense the top of the skin. So you give the client the ground. You've got the auto mode selected here. Now we may want to go and double check the auto delay. So remember our configuration key. Our auto delay is here, so press right down underneath it. Now this is a machine that was set to a 2.5 second auto delay. So that means that from the time that my probe touches the top of my client's skin, there would be a 2.5 delay before the actual pulse would detonate on its own. So we can bring this down. This is what the plus and minus key here is for. So you can go down. Let's bring it back down maybe to 1.5. I'm happy with that. We can go back into our treatment mode. We're in auto mode and everything is ready here. So there is a timer. The timer on the machine is for the session itself. So let's say that a client comes in and this client comes in for an hour session. I can set my timer on the machine in order to count down for the timer itself. The timer you find on the right side of the screen, and it's to be noted that it is in minutes. And so it goes up to 99 minutes only, and then it will wrap back down. So for example, an hour-long session would be a 60-minute timer. So you can set this to 0 and have it count up, or you can put in some sort of numbers and have it count down. There's also a start-stop right underneath it. So when you press underneath it, you can start and stop your timer. So any breaks that you take that does not constitute the appointment, you can stop the timer for that. So let's go into our machine and take a look at that. I'm going to take off the auto mode here, so we'll just go back to our regular treatment mode. The timer is here on the right. So what I would want to do here is use the plus and minus arrows in order to put my timer to what I want. So it will speed up as you go. Let's say I'm doing an hour-long session. This is 60 minutes here. So I can put it to 60 minutes, and then when I press there, it will start my countdown. If I want to take a break, I will just pause it here and it will stop it. You can restart it anytime you want. So start, stop is going to be right underneath the timer here. Like I said, you can also have the machine just down to 0. And then from here, instead, it will count up. So both are going to be options for you to use. So let's start going into the different treatment modes. The Junior 3G comes with a few different modalities. We have the thermolysis modalities, which are going to be flash and the thermoflash, and then we have some blends and a straight galvanic. So in order to display the different modalities, you just need to press on the keys over and over again until you get to the one that is what you want to do. So for example, this first button here, so these are my modes keys. This top one here with the alternating wave is the thermolysis key. Then the second one with the battery and the wave inside is going to be my blend modes. And then my anaphoresis, cataphoresis is the last key there. So you see the actual roller as well as the Vitaphase wand if this is something that you have available for your machine. In order to flip through the different modalities, you just need to press on this key here and it will go from the thermolysis to the flash thermolysis modalities. And then in the blends, same thing, but you need to press on the blend keys here. And so I can be in this electrolysis straight galvanic. I can be in this one is the pulsing blend. And oops, keep pressing, we'll press happy. And then this one here is the omni blend. So we have two different blend modes, one straight galvanic and two thermolysis modes. For the anaphoresis cataphoresis, this is our last key here, so you can just press on the same key and it will display the different modalities. So again, you just keep pressing the same key and it will flip through the different modalities. Thermolysis is up here, blend straight galvanic, and our aftercares, anaphoresis cataphoresis down below. So thermolysis is the use of alternating current in order to create friction in the tissues. This friction causes heat, and this heat is what coagulates or kills cells responsible for hair growth. As far as the different modalities that are present on the machine, we have a flash modality. It's to be noted that the flash modality goes up to hundredths of a second. So you do not have thousandths of a second on this machine. In order to use thousandths of a second, you would need to buy at least the senior model of the 3G machines. So the junior machine, the fastest modality that we have is the flash thermolysis. Flash thermolysis is going to be high intensity, so the percent is going to be above 60%, and the timing is in hundredths of a second. Then we have the thermolysis. Thermolysis has more moderate intensity. So usually our percent will be between about 40 to 60%, but our timing is going to be a little bit longer. So when we compare thermolysis to the flash thermolysis, thermolysis is going to be a little bit slower in timing. We can also have the machine do two pulses for us in order to do displacement. So displacement technique is something that we call moving while doing the insertion. So you move inside the follicle to deliver two different pulses in two different areas of the follicle. The machine has the capacity to deliver the pulses for you, so you can set that on the machine itself. So what I'd like to do at this point is to actually select a preset. So select an area of the body and sort of compare the two different modalities of thermolysis on the screen here. So in order to select a preset, it's actually pretty self-explanatory on this machine. You can just select a body part by pressing the button that it points to. So if we want to do underarm, for example, I press on the button that points to the underarm. I should see the area show up on the screen. If I don't, then it didn't work. But what you see also is the intensity. The intensity is showed here in number 3. That is the factory preset, so it will always load a 3 at first. You can move this up or down depending on the size of the hair. So usually very, very fine hairs, you may only need a level 1 or a level 2. When you get into medium to coarse, you can start to use level 3 and level 4. And then when you're getting into coarse and extra coarse, this is where you go into 5 and 6. And normally it's pretty rare that we go too high above this level here. So especially in more than one pulse, for example. So let's use something a little bit more common. So maybe underarm 3 as it was loaded. What you'll notice is that as I move the up and down here, the time and the intensity is adjusted. This is what a preset is. It is just recipes that are already calculated for you, and the time and the intensities were associated with a certain level. So for an underarm hair that is size 6, for example, they decided that you need about 0.16 of a second at 63%. If it is slightly less, then you have slightly less time and intensity. As you go down the levels, you'll see that the settings go down. So that's what the presets are there for. It just makes it easier so that you don't have to figure out the time and the intensity when you are selecting a modality. So for underarm 3, and we have 1 pulse here. What that means is that when I press on my foot pedal, which I have here, it is going to beep the 1 time. I could have the machine do multiple pulses for me. So I could select this number here, and let's just, for the sake of hearing it, let's put 3 pulses. I press on the foot pedal to confirm, and then I will have to press and hold down the foot pedal, and it will beep 3 times for me. Now, one mistake that people make is that they press on the foot pedal and let go, and therefore it doesn't deliver all 3 pulses. So keep in mind that if you do multiple pulses automatically, you need to press and hold down the foot pedal until all of the pulses have been delivered. So if we are to compare, let's bring this back down to our level, our 1 pulse only. We are in thermolysis, which was our moderate intensity, so usually between about 40 to 60 with slightly longer timing. So under arm 3, I was at 0.09 and 58%. If I go into my flash thermolysis, so remember I just press on my key here and it will display it the next modality. It will remember that I had selected under arm 3, but it will give me intensities, time and intensity that is for this modality. So my timing is now a little bit faster. I was at 0.09, I'm now at 0.05. And my intensity is much higher. So I was at, what, 58%, if I remember, and we are now at 84%. So quite a bit more intensity, but faster timing. So when do we want to use one versus the other? Usually, modalities with longer timing are used for deeper, thicker, more stubborn hairs. So using thermolysis would be more in cases of thick hairs, beards, underarms, bikinis, dry hairs, stubborn hairs, whereas flash could be more for finer hairs, more superficial hairs, things that are not quite as stubborn. You can use the multiple pulses to either deliver your current, your intensity in small increments versus just one big increment, or because you need to adjust your technique and do displacement in order to treat the bottom 2/3 of the follicle. So remember that you can adjust your pulses. So usually people will do double pulsing. So you can adjust your machine to do 2 pulses for you. Just hold down the foot pedal. And then if you use insulated probes, you can actually move and do displacement so that you deliver current down the bottom 2/3 of that follicle. We can adjust the presets however we want. So one nice thing about the Apple's technology is the fact that the presets for thermolysis are definitely very, very good to use, and most people won't really have to stray too much away from it. But that being said, you can actually plug in any number that you want in the space of the time and the intensity on the machines. So you're not locked into presets that were, configured by the manufacturer. You could actually select upper lip 3, like in this example, but then let's say you want more time. You could press right underneath here where your time is displayed, and then use your up and down arrows to move this time either up or down, depending on what you want to do. You can do the same thing with the intensity. So these are completely changeable depending on what times and intensities you'd like to use. So we've talked about the parameters here, so as far as the presets and using the intensity. So a level 2 or 3 tends to be a good place to start for most hairs, especially if we are dealing with more fine to medium size hairs. One thing to note on this slide here, which is good general information, is that when you start to play with the time and the intensities, usually if a hair is deeper, thicker, you want to increase the duration of the pulse. So that is the timing here. So if you want to increase one of the two, if the hair is thick and deep, go with the timing. And when you increase these things, you want to increase in increments of 2 to 3. That means that you do not go from 0.7 to 1.5. You go from 0.7 to 0.9 to 0.8. So go a little slow, because small changes in these numbers can make a big difference as far as the energy level that you're actually delivering in the follicle. When you are dealing with a hair that is more shallow, you're better off increasing the intensity. So when you are looking to increase the preset, so go from an upper lip 3 and go just a little bit higher. If your hair is deep, go up in the time. If your hair is shallow, go up in the percent. Let's go into our blend modes. So blend is using the combination of high frequency, which we just talked about, but also galvanic current. One thing with using the blend mode is that we are using direct current, and therefore we need to have a ground. The client needs to be holding the ground in order for this modality to work at all. If you do not give them the ground, nothing is happening. No direct current, no galvanic, and the hairs won't budge. So what happens with the blend method is that we are using the galvanic to create lye, and lye is corrosive. It destroys tissues. So we create the lye in order to dissolve the hair follicle. High frequency in this case is just there to facilitate the lye production, so not to actually coagulate. We want to be careful not to increase the high frequency so high that it is counterintuitive to the galvanic method. So we keep it down low so that you are just increasing the conductivity of the galvanic itself. It actually helps with the caustic soda and the galvanic current in the follicle. In order to use the blend method or the straight galvanic, the electrolysis method, make sure that you have a moist follicle that is in anagen phase. Anagen phase is when the hair has the most amount of moisture. So if you want to create a lot of lye, make sure that there is a lot of moisture in the follicle. Remember to give the client the bar or the plate electrode that is connected to the red cord, and it needs to be wrapped in the wet sponge or a wet paper towel. That increases conductivity. And always check for contraindication to galvanic current. Because the client is holding the ground, the current is flowing through the body to a certain extent, and so you want to make sure that there is no contraindication to something like that. When we talk about the blend methods on this machine, we have two basic types of blends. One is a pulsing blend and the other is a continuous blend. This first one here, where it says, you'll see the blend method, you'll see which one your lead is, and you will see a number here that will denote how many pulses of high frequency. This is a pulsing blend. Essentially, when we are doing the blend method, we are concerned mainly with the time and the intensity of the milliamps. Milliamps is the intensity for a galvanic current. If we look at this chart here, the galvanic is represented by this line here that ramps up slowly, stays consistent for most of the pulse, and then ramps down from there. This is these settings here, 7 seconds, 0.24 MA. Of course, this is hypothetical. Then what we have is high frequency. High frequency is thrown in there just to agitate the galvanic, not to coagulate. We can see what those settings are because they will be on the machine also. What we have is we have 3 pulses of 9% high frequency that are half a second in length. So 0.52 seconds, 9%. Anything below about 15% on this machine will not coagulate in this kind of time. So we're not coagulating. We are simply heating up the tissues and agitating the galvanic. So what we have here is 3 pulses of high frequency and galvanic current. The next type of blend is our continuous blend. So what we have here, if you look at the graph, the galvanic does the same thing. So we just have 7 seconds, and here in this example, it's 0.27 MA. And so our galvanic ramps up, stays consistent, and then ramps down from there. What is different is how the high frequency is thrown in. In the pulsing blend method, we had the high frequency in 3 different pulses. Here it is just continuous, meaning that you will have a low-level high frequency, but it will be on for almost the same amount of time as our galvanic pulse. So we will go through, let's talk about electrolysis, and then we'll go through the different modalities. Electrolysis is pretty self-explanatory. This is a bit outdated, so it's to be noted that now the machines come with an actual electrolysis modality. So the screen will not look like this. What I want you to understand is that with the electrolysis modality, it is only the galvanic. There is no high frequency at all. So I'll show you what that looks like now on the screen. Let's go into our video and flip through the different blend modalities. So blend modalities, if you remember, was the one with the battery and with the AC oscillating wave inside of it. So this denotes the battery is for galvanic and the wave is for the AC current, which is high frequency. So when we press on this key here, you can keep pressing and actually flip through the different blend and also the straight galvanic modality. This first one here with all the different numbers is actually our pulsing blend. You know that it is the pulsing blend mainly because you see the pulse icon here and it tells you there are 3 of them. So the higher the preset, to be noted, if I go up here, the more these settings will increase. Also will the pulses. Now I have 5 pulses. 8 is my highest here, so we can't go much higher than this. So this is the highest setting of a preset that I have on this machine. So from left to right, we have the high frequency settings here, 0.63 seconds, 11%. When I see a percent, I know that I'm talking about high frequency. In the middle, we have our galvanic settings. So we have a 9-second pulse at 0.66 MA, and there are 5 pulses of high frequency. So what happens with this is when we press on the foot pedal, we want to make sure that we hold it down for the whole duration of the time, but you will actually see the lights light up here. This is the high frequency. This is the galvanic. So just go ahead and pay attention. We'll do this a couple times. So there was a few different tones as we went through this. You heard a beep for every time that the high frequency was delivering its pulse. And then there was a little tone at the end that told you that the galvanic had turned off. We are leading with galvanic here. That means that when I press on the foot pedal, my galvanic was the thing that turned on first. Second was the high frequency. You can change this. So if you are one of those electrologists that like to lead with high frequency, you actually have the ability to flip this around and have the high frequency be delivered first. So that you can do if you go into your configuration menu. When you go into your configuration menu, as long as you were in a blend mode to begin with, now you should be able to see galvanic high frequency. You will not see this if you were in thermolysis. So when you press underneath this here, it will just flip the lead. So it took me back to my screen, and now what I see is high frequency first, galvanic second. So now if I press on the foot pedal, I will have a pulse first, then my galvanic will turn on. There you go. So let's go back and put our lead back into galvanic here. It flips it. Now galvanic is first, high frequency is second. So when I press on my foot pedal, my galvanic lights first. Then we have our pulses. So I won't do this the whole time. One thing to keep in mind, as soon as you take your foot off the pedal, it interrupts the actual setting there, and so no more current goes through. So you want to make sure that you hold the foot pedal down for as long as necessary for you to go through this whole entire pulse here. If we go into our OmniBlend, OmniBlend was the continuous high frequency with our galvanic. So in this case here, press on the foot pedal, then you'll see half a second later my high frequency lights, but it doesn't turn off. It's not pulses, it's continuous. So you see both lights at the same time, and then one turns off, and eventually your galvanic turns off. So galvanic first, because I'm leading with that, high frequency second, both together for most of the pulse, then high frequency will turn off, and then galvanic turns off. I can change my lead, just like I did with the other one. I'll cut that out. You can with the other ones. Okay, so let's continue. Let's do our galvanic. So straight galvanic, electrolysis is here. There is no high frequency here. This one is pretty self-explanatory. You can just set your time and your intensities there. Use the preset, however you choose to do it. When you press on the foot pedal, the only thing that will light up is the battery because there is no high frequency here at all. So just 9 seconds of straight MA. So when to use the different modalities? Well, most of the time, the pulsing blend and the omni blend are two very generic type of blends. So they're for most normal cases. You can use either or. I think that it becomes sort of a preference here. The straight galvanic, you would use that really on very sensitive clients who have a lot of moisture in their follicles, so not normally something that is good for everybody. So calculation of units of Lie, this is not something that can display on this machine. You need to have at least the senior to have the machine calculate these for you, but you can use units of Lie as a point of reference. Essentially what it does is it calculates the amount of Lie produced in the follicle, and it depends on time and milliamps. So you would have to know what your time and your milliamps is. You can plug these numbers into this here and then find out how many units of Lie you are creating with whatever setting you are using. So as an example, if we go into our underarm 8 here, which I was using, we have a 6.6 MA at 9 seconds. So 6.6, I'm sorry, 0.66 times 10 is 6.6. Multiply that by 9 and you would have your energy level. So we're looking at about 60 units of Lie. So this preset, underarm 8, in the electrolysis mode is producing about 60 units of Lie, which is, according to this chart, enough Lie for coarse hair. So what happens if you actually need to be up in the extra coarse range? Because the machine doesn't really offer a preset that is high enough, what you can actually do is manually change the presets into numbers that work a little bit better for you. What I tend to recommend is for people to do a tolerance test and then go and plug these numbers back in. So this is the slide for the tolerance test here. The tolerance test is a test for the amount of milliamps that somebody can actually tolerate. So you can do this test on a client in the area where you're going to work and find out how much milliamp you're able to use for the preset. So we can do that by going into our configuration. So we're in our configuration menu, and then we have the tolerance test that is right here. So when I press on tolerance test, I see tolerance test, it says 0.0 MA. Essentially what I need to do is I need to give the client the ground, which is the red cord, with the paper towel that is wrapped around the plate or the bar, and I need to do a perfect insertion. So if I'm working on my client's underarm, I will do a perfect insertion in their underarms, and then I will let them know that I'm going to press on the foot pedals. You're going to press down on the foot pedal and hold it down, and they need to tell you when they're at their tolerance with the actual Lie itself. So you'll see when I press on the foot pedal, it's going to increase, and the client is going to say, oh, okay, I feel it. And then they might say, okay, enough. Then you lift your foot off the pedal. At this point, you get a certain amount of milliamps, and you can usually, we recommend you do this test 2 to 3 times just to get an average, and then use that number and plug it back into your setting. So let's say that 0.62 was my number that worked pretty well. I did a few tests, and this is what the client's tolerance hovered around. So I will go back into my blend key here, and what you'll notice is that it actually plugged it in already. So this number, my 0.62, is going to be plugged into my preset there. Let's go into OmniBlend. So I switched here into OmniBlend so that we can have some high frequency in this pulse. Now, if I wanted to use my 0.62, I can press right underneath here, and let's go back down to what my tolerance test told me my client could handle. Now, if I need around 80 units of Lie, what you would want to do is you would want to plug in your MA and then solve for what time you would need to use. So in this case, you would need to do your milliamps, which is my 0.62, multiply that by 10, which is 6.2, and then you need to divide the 80 by 6.2. And what that gives you is a time of close to 13 seconds. So if you need to produce around 80 units of Lie, and your client can only handle about 0.62 MA, in order to produce that amount of Lie, you will actually need to have close to a 13-second pulse. So you can use this to figure out different things. What I pressed here was to display the percent under the Omni blend. So the Omni blend has continuous high frequency, and so you can actually change your high frequency by pressing down underneath here. There is no time for high frequency because it is continuous, so it really doesn't matter. This key won't show anything. But here you have 14%. You can go up and down from there. Just be careful because too much high frequency will start to coagulate, and coagulation dries out the tissues, and if you don't have moisture, you can't create the lye. Okay, so the last of our presets, or the last of our modalities, is talking about the cataphoresis and anaphoresis. Cataphoresis and anaphoresis, if you remember, was the last of our big buttons down at the bottom here. So when I press there, what I'm going to see is cataphoresis and then anaphoresis. One thing to note is that I had selected underarms as one of my presets. When I switch to cataphoresis, it will automatically plug in the amount of milliamps necessary for an underarm. These are averages, you can always change it, but just know that you can actually put in different averages just by selecting the different body parts. So we have a few options here. Depending on where it is, you can see that it will change the average amount of MA for cataphoresis. When you do cataphoresis, if you've noticed, we have two lights that lit up down here. So we have the light for our ground. Cataphoresis is direct current, so you need to be grounded. And then we have the light for the wand, because the wand has the handle, and that handle attachment fits the roller. So that's what we need in order to do the cataphoresis after treatment. So why do cataphoresis? We do it for post-care. It is germicidal because it creates the hydrochloric acid on the skin, as the positive pole does with galvanic current. So it acidifies the pH of the skin, which means that bacteria and germs cannot survive. So it kills bacteria for that. It's a vasoconstrictor, so it constricts blood vessels, and therefore you reduce redness and reduce swelling. It's an astringent on the sebaceous glands, especially after thermolysis treatments where the thermolysis agitates the sebaceous gland. It can help to calm things down. So clients that tend to break out quite a bit on areas like upper lips and things like that, you may consider doing a little bit more cataphoresis for this reason here. It calms the skin and reduces redness. You want to do it for about 3 to 5 minutes, and ideally using a positively ionized product. You know positively ionized product because you will actually see with the Gala line, you will see a plus or a minus on the cream itself, showing you if it's ionizable. So a pretty common cream is for cataphoresis with electrolysis is the Hydra Plus or the Easy Balm. So two pretty common ones. The Hydra Plus here is an aloe vera gel with witch hazel. What I want you to see is the little plus here that you have in the front. That means that this product is positively ionized and therefore can be used with the cataphoresis, which is the positive pole. When you use the cataphoresis in the positive pole on the skin and you have a positively ionized product, it forces that product deep into the skin. So it's better than just putting the Hydra Plus on the skin, massaging it in a little bit, and then sending your client on your way. So the intensity may change depending on the client's tolerance. I showed you how to change between the different presets, but that being said, some of the presets may be a little too intense, or the client may feel nothing at all. Rule of thumb with cataphoresis is you may feel a little bit of tingling. You may feel nothing at all, but it should never hurt. So this should be the good part of the treatment. You can always use your plus and minus, your arrows on the screen in order to move the preset up and down. What I would say is that be careful not to press on the foot pedal when you are performing cataphoresis, because pressing on the foot pedal increases the setting. So some people think they have to press on the foot pedal in order for this to work. If you do that, you're going to be maxing out the MA every single time, and then it will hurt every single time. So don't press on the foot pedal. Just pick a preset and then adjust using the plus and the minus if you need to. Anaphoresis is the opposite pole. So when we use the anaphoresis, we are using the negative pole. And this is not usually something that we do with with electrolysis, but this is a pretty simple type of facial. So usually you would want to use this with some sort of disencrusting gel in the negative pole, and it is more for extraction type facial. So we have the different programs. There's 512 programs on the machines, one for each body part, but also for under each modality. And then we have the different intensities. They go from 1 to 8 actually. And then whether you are in insulated or non-insulated probes. So if you remember from the beginning when we talked about insulated versus non-insulated, it affects specifically the presets, the time and the intensities for the different numbers. Normally, as a starting point, pick a body part. If the body part you are working on is not one of the options available, just try to find the thing that most closely resembles what you're about to do. So if you're working on a cheek, there is no cheek setting, but you have chin, you have neck, and you have upper lip. Pick whichever one you feel most resembles what you're working on. Then the second thing is to set your intensity. Remember that for fine hairs, you'd want to start between about 1 and 2. For medium hairs, 3 to 5, and then coarse hairs, 6 to 8. Be careful when you go up high with double tapping or triple tapping or however many pulses you think that you need to deliver. Any of these machines, preset or not, can cause a lot of damage if not used properly. So be careful with how much intensity you are delivering in the skin. So the moisture test, which is not available on this machine, but could be available on yours, is essentially to test the hydration level of the skin. You need to give the client the ground, and then you can test the skin moisture in one of two ways. You can either use the wand with the roller, touch the top of the skin, and see the superficial hydration. So you could see hydrated, normal, or dry. Or you can use a probe and do an actual physical insertion inside of the follicle. This will test more the hydration at the level of the dermis, so deeper hydration. You could have another readout whether the follicle itself is moist or dry from doing the insertion itself. Vitaphases is also the other type of handheld device that could be available with your machine if you have one that is not from the US market. There are different types of handheld devices that serve different purposes, like an infrared, a light therapy, one that does the it's essentially it does the galvanic with a vibration, so kind of massages, different things like that. So more information about these could definitely be obtained if you have one of those devices. Here are the different ones. So you can see whether you have the microcurrent. We used to use that for cataphoresis, and it had some red lights. This is the light therapy. It goes through all 3 different colors, so blue, green, and the red. And this is the infrared one. So these can all be connected to the machine if you have the connector for it. And so this is it for the Junior 3G training. The PowerPoint should be available for you to download, and should you have any questions, don't hesitate to email us.